Today I have Kara M. Zone back to talk about Book 2, Ashes Fall at Dawn. She talks about how this experience was a little different than the experience from her first book, understandably so. We talk about some of our favorite characters, such as Garrick, as well as the memory loss trope, and a bunch of other good stuff within Book 2. As always, this is a discussion that has spoilers, so I highly recommend you check out the book first and then come back to this episode just so you have a better context for what we're talking about. I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to Busy Reading Romantasy, a video podcast that discusses books that merge elements of romance and fantasy while occasionally exploring other genres. We get to escape our world and dive deep into themes of good versus evil, power dynamics, and all of the delicious taboo topics. Curiosity and open-mindedness are a must. That being said, this is a podcast for mature audiences only and will contain spoilers. Your mental health matters, so be sure to check the trigger warnings of each book to decide if this is the right episode for you to listen to. Now, let's get into today's episode. I know, I am both impressed and intimidated by the convention circle and how quickly things go. Because even though I have my tickets for the ones that I'm attending in 2025, applications for 2026 are already open, and it's just like a never-ending loop that you get sucked into.
It really
Yeah.
is. Yeah, well, we went to the Big Ohio Book Con this past Saturday, me and my friend, and it was so nice because we never get to spend time together. So it was more about that. We walked in and we were like, what the fuck? Because it was just so many people, so loud, and I get overstimulated very easily. So it's from 9 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock on Saturday, 9 to 4 on Sunday.
Yeah.
And we were both like, can we do this next year? Because there are so many people.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I will definitely get you some stuff. And yeah, that's exciting.
I'm glad my friends are reaching out to you too. That's fun.
Yeah, it is. It is very cool. And it's funny because I think meeting all of you separately, and then when I go on Instagram and then I see everyone commenting and supporting each other, and I'm like, oh, I don't even know maybe the depth that you interact, but in my head, you guys are all best friends. I love it.
You can come and be with us, though. You can come join us.
Perfect. Yeah. No, I would love to. Yes.
I'll invite you to one of our writing groups. It's not actually like a writing group. We're not like, here's what we write. We just talk and support. But yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's great. I'm happy to always talk and support. That's what I do.
And if you ever want to write, we can help you there too.
I've been mulling it over in my head. I've been thinking about it, but I haven't made the jump. So we'll see. We'll get there. Maybe just for fun. I think I need to take the pressure off myself.
Yes, but the number one thing I do spotlights, email and in person, not in person, but video for a mastermind that I'm part of. And every single person, when they pick the question, what do I wish I would have done differently? They said start earlier. So starting, because if you start now, 5 years from now, you're going to look back and be like, holy shit, look what I did. So
perfect. That is a good note. I'm actually, funny enough, going to Nashville tomorrow. And we're driving from Florida. I'm going to, I got invited to, I'm being adopted by my friend's family in a fun way. And so I got invited to spend 4th of July with them and everything, and just being part of the family. But we have a 10-hour drive, so I'm like, oh, okay, perfect, noted.
Well, that's interesting. It's 9 hours for us, so it's almost directly, even though it's more like this probably instead of, it's kind of like right in the middle.
Yeah. Oh, funny. Interesting. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Kara, it is so great to have you back. I would love to know just what have you been up to since we last talked? What's life looking like?
Actually, it's pretty good. It's the weirdest thing in the world.
life's kind of good.
It is. It's really weird. So I know we talked last time, like I've been doing indie publishing for other people and helping them since 2019, and I'm incorporating everything I learned and learning from all of their mistakes and doing things that the experts say to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it works. I mean, it's so crazy. I mean, I'm still having to market my ass off.
Mm-hmm.
That's never going to change, because if I don't market, then people don't know my book is there. It's just the way that it is. Unless I somehow get, billions of dollars and can start pouring it into marketing, which I'm not going to. Um,
Fair, yeah.
ads. But last week, my book 2 came out. And not only that, on from the 17th through the 21st, there is Indie Authors Central. They do these great Stuff Your Kindle events. And my book, like, sort of went crazy. And I got like 5,000 downloads in 3 days. Cinders went
Wow.
to number 2 on dark fantasy horror. It went to number 3 on romantic fantasy, and it topped the 100 top Kindle store free ones at 66. So
That
I'm
is amazing.
thank you. And it was my birthday last week. So it's just like, yeah, it was interesting because it worked. I mean,
Yeah,
as soon as the event was over, I'm back into the, between 1,000 and 3,000, but that's still pretty high considering.
yeah.
So it's good.
No, that's so exciting. Congrats,
Thank
first
you.
of all. And yeah, I can only imagine like what that feels like to see, your work getting out there and catching traction and
It's shocking. And one thing that it makes me really sad is because other people were hitting the bestseller top 10 lists too in their categories. And because it's free, because it's a
Mhm.
Kindle, they were sort of saying, oh, well, it doesn't count because blah, blah, blah. No, it does. It does. You have to
Mhm.
do strategy, it's keywords, it's, doing these kinds of things. 11,000 books roughly get published every day. So if your book can make it through that, and I tried saying it, and then I had other people backing me up. So I'm hoping that that kind of went into their heads and be like, no, this is a huge thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I couldn't imagine like getting crazy numbers and being like, well, technically, like, you know,
yeah.
um,
Well, and I think
yeah,
that has to do with sort of like, well, people aren't buying my book and blah, 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 blah. And, I
right,
think we can
right.
all just, we can all rationalize the good things away, because I think that's what our brains do. So
Mhm.
even
Yeah.
me, I'm kind of like, well, I'm shocked. I probably shouldn't say anything about it. So I battle with
Yeah,
that too.
yeah. I've been so aware of the stories I create
Oh,
lately. The stories that my brain creates to explain maybe things outside of my control. And that I think that just popped up as it relates of like it's easy to say like, well, they're not buying it, they're just taking it because it's free or whatever. It's really easy again, as you said, it's really easy for
mhm,
our brains to just kind of go down that route. It almost feels like a safety blanket to think
mhm,
like surely they can't, really be enjoying it or whatever. And I'm just aware of that at the very least. I think that's always the first step is just bringing in awareness of like what am I creating and telling myself to explain the things that are happening around me. Are they
that's
true? Are
good.
they not true? I don't know. We'll never know.
No, and that's the thing too. Like whenever I don't know, I look at like those kinds of things as lessons. And again, you
Mhm,
have to
mhm.
train your brain to stop with the intrusive thoughts. And I
Yeah,
don't think it ever really goes away. But the fact that you even have stories going on, you're letting yourself do that is like a really big step.
yeah. Thank you, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah. So obviously, we have reconvened to switch our focus to Ash's Fall at Dawn. I would love to start before we get into like the deep book talk. How was this process? Was it any different than the first book? What stayed the same? What's changed? I guess.
This one was tough.
Yeah.
So I got it in my head that I had to work a specific amount of hours so I could support my indie author career. And not because my husband said so. He's very supportive. He comes to all the events and everything like that. But I got so I mean, I do work. I work a part-time job. I work as a sub at a high school for lunchrooms, and then school's out. So it's a little bit different. And then I work for a chef with her schedule and stuff. So yeah. So I took on another job, and not only did it make me crazy, but the woman that I worked for is a lovely person, and it made her crazy too, because we work very differently. But while that was all going on, I was trying to write this story, and I wrote a novella. I was like, what the hell am I doing? And so it wasn't quite as refined as I had wanted it to be when I turned it over to the copy editor. And the first copy editor I was using, her style and mine stopped working together. So I was in kind of a scramble to find another copy editor. I knew there was this weakness and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I love my betas that did this and stuff. They were very complimentary. The problem with that is that I couldn't because feedback helps you sort of find those holes and stuff. So I got another copy editor and we were working together, and my PR rep agent, she's not an agent, but I don't person.
Yeah.
Freelance part-time PR. She read it. I was like, you need to tell me. And she's never afraid to give her opinions and stuff. And she's like, this isn't your strongest work. And I'm like, I know. How can I fix it? And so she gave me a couple pointers, and I was like, that's it. That's fine. So my poor copy editor jumped into this new project, like you know what I mean? Like with like 10 days to go before I was going to have to do the revisions and get it out to the ARC people. And I don't know if we want to talk about this, but she ended up breaking her leg in the process too. I was like, yeah, I know. It was chaos. She's fine.
Good. I'm glad.
She's, still working through that. But, and I was like, okay, I know that there's a problem. I'm going to fix it. My PR person told me, and she's like, okay, well, I'll do this, and then I'll go back and you highlight these things. And so it was a huge scramble. But she was really enthusiastic with the final product. So I felt so much more comfortable putting it out there. And it's not that anybody was like, oh, this is the worst thing. It just wasn't what it was supposed to be. So it was tough.
That's fair. You have such an awareness of it. I guess I'm curious if there is any kind of advice or thoughts, again, just for other authors who might be really like hard on themselves. And it sounds like, you were aware and you went back and made changes, and like it might have been chaotic and scrambled, but the book's out and you're moving forward. So I guess just speaking to that aspect of it, of kind of the mental aspect of sharing your work out there with the world, and kind of again your thoughts of it compared to opening up to the rest of the world to share their thoughts about it.
Yeah. Well, it takes practice first and foremost, and it definitely takes a little bit of time. You kind of have to trust yourself. And one of the things that I like about indie, I mean, it's not easy. I don't want to say that it's easy, but there's a little bit more flexibility with your novels. Because if there is a weakness and you publish it, you can always go back and make a second edition, and you don't need the permission and all of these things. But so there's that. And really that's a good question. A little bit more, like for a little bit more depth. It did take me 5 or 6 years to get to the point where I'm at right now. And it did take me many people telling me that my writing was the problem, that their books weren't selling, and they weren't marketing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I kind of built up a resistance. I've heard that I was garbage so much that I just built up a resistance to it. And the last person who was like, well, you don't know what you're talking about, and you don't even know what you're doing. And it was a ridiculous conversation. And we don't want to pay you, but we still want to work with you. You know, so I mean, it's just easy. And I don't want anybody to go through those kinds of things. Because I know everybody's hard on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I am too.
Mm-hmm.
But in the long run, readers want your novel. Mm-hmm. You have an audience. You have to find who they are. And the more you write, the better you get. But to be sensitive to go in a huge spiral, I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
Be sensitive to what the changes are. It really is a world where you kind of have to put your ego to the side. Mm-hmm. Because if you have that and somebody gives you feedback, and you don't like it, you might be missing out on something. Mm-hmm. Not everybody works together well. My copy editor before, she and I worked on Cinders together, and it went pretty smoothly. This time we just weren't on the same page. But I really searched, like, am I just taking this too personally? And she wasn't completely wrong, because she's like, there's a developmental flaw, but the way that it didn't go there. Mm-hmm. So it really is more about self-actualization, asking yourself, is this right? Is this wrong? How does this feel? Reading and reading and rereading and reading and seeing those kind of holes. Mm-hmm. Does
yeah.
Okay.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And you bring up such a, first, just thank you for sharing your experience as well. I think, again, as people, it is a little bit, we don't always want to talk about those things, or it's easier to breeze over once we've had some bit of success, and we find our voices to look back and kind of alter the story, even if it's just incrementally. Versus when you're in it, and there's probably moments where you're like, well, this sucks. Like, this is not fun. Yeah.
No, absolutely, there was. And the thing about stories is that, whereas my other copy editor said it needed a full developmental edit, once you kind of understand the mechanics of building stories, it didn't. I needed 2 chapters, and then I needed to tie it with this thread. So it's really easy to change something. You can take out a sentence and completely change the whole scene, or you can put in a sentence. So it's that kind of nuance, and hopefully, people take something away from that, because it doesn't have to be a complete rewrite. It doesn't have to.
Right.
I mean, it is still stressful, but it really was like, okay, I just needed 2 new chapters, bam, and then read through it again, make the little threads so they all tie together. And it was more about finding the right spots to put the stuff than it was. So.
Yeah, very fair, very fair. Well, you did it. It's out. People are reading it. I was looking at the reviews yesterday, and it's always exciting. Sorry, are you ready to jump into it a little bit more?
Sure.
So I took notes, and then, as you know, I've been traveling and more traveling later. So they're not polished, refined questions. We're just gonna go with it. But so just starting off where Ashes Fall at Dawn starts, Kaitlin has lost her memory of what has happened the 3 months prior, essentially. Can you just walk us through a little bit of where all the pieces are at the start of this book and the things that are going to start happening?
Yes, I can.
That's fair. Are you already working? Like, I'm sure, is your mind already ahead on another book or
No,
Okay.
it's not. What's interesting is that this was technically and originally part of book one. I know we talked about that too, and I
Right.
broke
Yeah.
it up. And then my original plan for when I started on this, I'm going to get published, journey. That book was actually supposed to be book one. So
Mhm.
I like the way that it unfolded. I'm not 100% sure. So Finn and Max, realize that she's been taken basically exactly when she was taken.
Mhm.
They rush to the hotel room and they see a bunch of stuff. And originally Philip wasn't in anything. He wasn't even a character. I mean, he was
Mhm.
there, but because I did the Even After novella,
Mhm.
and his character was so strong and he is such a good dad. It was like, well, there's no way he's not going to be there to help his kids, protect them.
Mhm.
um so he steps in and kind of does, I don't even know what to call it. It's not really a meteorship role like I originally thought. It's more like he's the boss man and Lilith's the boss man, and they're like hashing it out and stuff. So
Mhm.
from Caitlin's perspective, she wakes up and she doesn't remember, but she already can sense that there's all kinds of fuckery going around. And instead of being submissive and demure the way that the medication was supposed to make her, she's just pissed. And she doesn't know why she's pissed. She's just pissed. And that was a really good turn for me because it was so hard to get her character right with all the complexities of,
Mhm.
being an automaton and different things. So I really like that her character turned that around. So she's trying to figure out everything. And then her mother's just like, we're going to have a party and you get to meet a bunch of guys. And one of them is going to be the guy that you marry. Um,
Casual. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And Lilith's really interested in Finn because Aiden and Max have the Trium Perfectum link. And
Mhm.
so she's always searching for more power. And she's like, well, if these two people have the Trium Perfectum, then I can take all of that and I can siphon it and use it for myself. And
Mhm.
originally, she was supposed to be blind to
Mhm.
everything that was going on. And I knew right away when I started writing that, I was like, this is, first off, it's way too easy. And she's
Mhm.
also a smart woman. It doesn't matter that she's evil. She's very
Mhm.
intelligent. She's very manipulative and conniving. She's going to see those things. And the one of the last changes, I made was Philip just went in and said, "These are all my cards. You already did this to my son. What makes you think that I'm going to do this to? I'm going to let you do this to either of my kids and Max, because Max is like a son to me too."
Mhm.
And instead of like sneaking around and hiding, even though there's still some sneaky hidey stuff, they basically, again, it's all out in the open, it's all honest, and it
Mhm.
totally changed the dynamic in, I think, the best way possible. And I I have some readers that are like, Philip's real sexy now. Like, okay,
Yeah.
because
I
he's
see
all
that.
boss man. So
Very much, very much. No, and I love how you did that because, like you said, I think there's always, when there's, pieces moving around that are sneaky and behind the scenes, and, sometimes there is a really obvious element where, as a reader, I'm like, how do they not know? How would she not? She would never just be like, okay. Like, Lilith would know what's going on or that something is up. And so I think that works out great. And it does, like you said, change the energy of the events that transpire from it.
it does. And it was like, I mean, and I use this in my novels, and I think I use it too much, but it was like that puzzle piece finally going into the exact right place.
Hmm.
Because I had been trying and talking to people about, like, Lilith is smart. She's not just gonna like know everything and or
Hmm.
not gonna pretend not to know.
Hmm.
Like, just because, again, I already said this a little bit, but just because she's evil doesn't make her dumb. She's running a multi-million-dollar company. She's
Right.
manipulative, her kids.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. So, moving on a little bit, I wanted to especially talk about Caitlin reconnecting with Finn, especially, post memory loss. And I've quickly realized I think that's a trope that I really enjoy. There's something about like just falling in love twice, whereas a reader, I'm like, yes, you're doing it. Um, so I guess just if there was any thoughts you had in terms of sharing about creating that dynamic and especially just with her memory loss in general, it was a common thing where she was also getting really frustrated because she wanted all the facts and everyone was like, "Ooh, that's really a lot." And now is maybe not the best time for that. So that was like a common uh dynamic and kind of challenge that they were facing. But especially reconnecting with Finn and as the memories are coming back and poor Max being like, "Guys, stop. I don't want this." Anything you'd like to speak about just that part?
well, and I've had a couple of reviewers mention, oh, it's like insta lust, and I'm like, but it's not. If
Yeah.
you have sex with somebody 3 days before, your body is going to remember. It's going to be instinctual, and that's really what I leaned into.
Yeah.
And originally I had her like not necessarily going for it enough. And then I had the manuscript review way back in 2024 when it was book one. And that manuscript reviewer was like, why doesn't she remember him? And I was like, yeah, why doesn't she remember him? So I think that Finn and Max being there helps jog some of the memories. I purposefully put memory loss in there just because with PTSD or complex PTSD, you forget things. Like our brains are so complicated and mean, but complicated that if you have a traumatic experience, your neurons, shift instantly. And it protects us from those memories because they're too big or too hard or, all of those things. And it will only release things psychologically for when it thinks that you're ready for it and it won't be overwhelming. And I went through this process. I did, cognitive behavioral therapy. So I wanted to work that in a lot. And I really did base it off of the stuff that I had from, my complicated history and, family situations and stuff. So I was hoping that it came through like that. But it is interesting that people are like, it happens too fast. I'm like, I get it. I thought so too, but it really doesn't because, again, they did have this deep connection. They have this magical connection. So the fact that she knows something is there under the surface and above the surface, I think plays really well with the tension and balance.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love the point that you mentioned about the body remembers, where even if the thoughts are gone, that does feel like a very I love when she kept like thinking that like, okay, I don't really know this person, but this feels right. And trusting your body in the sense of that you wouldn't be getting that signaling if things were not right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I put down, when Finn told her, "You're the strongest damn person I know." I'm like, "What a compliment." I had to write that one down because I was like, "Oh, I would love that." Like someone, that was, um, just beautiful to see, and like I said, it's quickly becoming a trope that I enjoy just because there's something about, falling in love all over again and just seeing how they navigate such a challenge, is always I enjoy it at least.
Thank you. No, thank you very much. I'm so glad that you enjoyed that. That was one of the ones that I definitely wanted to keep in there. It was
Yeah.
so strong when I was writing it.
Yeah.
Originally, it was they were actually arguing about it because they were withholding all kinds of information.
Mhm.
And my copy editor again was going through, and she wasn't giving me a complete developmental edit, but she knew my problem. You know what I mean, like
Mhm.
with the
Yeah.
developmental stuff. And she's like, why aren't they telling people? Why aren't they telling her something? And why isn't this like a softer moment? I mean, he's like, this is really harsh for everything she's gone through. And I was like, it is. So it did turn into the better, more softer bonding moment for them.
Yeah, yeah. And it's I actually was just talking about this in another episode with the author Bethany Finger. She also has a like memory loss trope in her second book, and it finally kind of clicked for me because it's in my work of just like talking to different readers and authors and everything. Back when I used to ask like what tropes people loved versus what they didn't care for, miscommunication is one that always tends to come up on the like not cared for list. And in talking with her, it finally clicked for me that it's not necessarily the miscommunication itself, but it's the time and tension under with it's drawn out. And when it's really drawn out, as a reader, you get really frustrated because you're like, just talk to each other. So again, applause for just throwing things out there, and that I think as a reader, I quite enjoy that because I do also get frustrated when I'm like, just say the thing. I don't. I'm very like I'll be a mysterious girl, and I'm like, so once when I was 10,
Yeah.
I'm just it all comes out. So yeah.
No, I'm actually the same way in real life too. Like if I have a thought, it basically comes out of my
Yep.
mouth,
Yep.
which I think is part of the reason why, like when I talk, I have to start somewhere and then I spiral and then get to the point. But I do hate the miscommunication trope too, for the exact same reason. Just talk to each other.
Yeah.
But it also, like, when I started writing it, this was even a different novel. When I was ghostwriting, I realized that it's not necessarily that they won't talk to each other. It is more about that person's insecurities and different things like that. It's a different kind of level. So I think that like people in real life self-sabotage, and I think that miscommunication is also a way that you could show self-sabotage and insecurities, like where their holes are.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. That's a great point as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So my next one, touching on Garrick. He's not. He's a little more active in a sense of this one and the ways that he's showing up. Specifically, he has a moment with Finn, and he turns around and he goes, "If I." What did he say? If I hit on you, oh, if I hit on you, you wouldn't even be questioning it. And I was like, hang on, wait. A little spicy there.
It is.
Yeah, tell
It
me
is.
tell me about that and just kind of his uh own involvement in this story.
So he was another character that wasn't there. Like when this first started, it just wasn't. But the more I wrote it, the more it made sense because Kaitlin stopped and gave him the ball and stuff, and because she's part of the prophecy, and um, the magical tribunal is so messed up and stuff. They're like, well, that kid was chosen, and he's gonna be blah 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 blah. And I haven't met a person that has read the novels that hasn't said I love Garrick. Um, but also, like, sort of a part of that is if you're basically immortal, like, who the hell cares if you're heterosexual or homosexual or anything like that? So it's definitely more sexual fluidity. And I tried to play that in, and I love that you picked that up because I feel like everybody is missing that. And it was one of my favorite scenes because um there'll be more later in the stories, like he's going to get his own novella and stuff like that. So it'll come into a really good place. I think it is foreshadowing a little bit also.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I loved that scene as well. And I think again, when you are in a situation where nobody wants to be there, like it sucks. And to have someone like Eric who is just kind of cracking jokes that comedic relief. Oh, good Lord. Don't mind me, just moving some stuff around over here.
That's all right.
The comedic relief and just kind of someone to break that tension a little bit, where I immediately stopped and I was like, wait, hang on, back it up. Reread that part.
Good.
And so speaking of some comedic relief, the other scene that really stood out to me was Robin, I believe, when she was coming to lead, kind of as the, I like to call it like the final battle, right, is happening, and all the pieces start moving really rapidly, and decisions have to be made, and people have to get out, stuff is happening. Um, when she's like, we have to go through the mage, the the hedge maze, and like be careful of like the shadowy parts, and she's like, let's hold on, like you're just gonna die a horrible slow death if you fall into them. And then she was like, oh, like it was like, where did that come from? Because that was another one that stood out to me, where I was like, oh wait, like it was just a fun moment.
First off, that's a spoiler. I don't know if you need to put that on there or something, because
Yeah.
nobody knew that she was.
Right.
I had a couple people like point out, and they were like, I bet she's Faye. But that wasn't clear, I think, until it wasn't supposed to be clear. I don't know if it was to everybody or not, but when she takes Kaitlin.
Yeah, I was like, well, wait, what's happening?
Good.
I did not want to try, like, I didn't want to trust her, very similar to Kaitlin. It took a while to win me over.
Yeah, and that'll come in more to play in book 3 too. That's going to be an interesting dynamic, because Robin's really close with Michael, so it's going to be like it's going to add some more tension. But she was, and this is why I love drafting, because she was just a stupid, like, cookie cutter, spoiled rich person when I really first wrote this, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And then the more I wrote, the more I was like, okay, people are more complicated than this, and how can we do that? I don't necessarily want my, fae, fairy people, like the whole creature thing. I don't want them to be cruel the way that other, not that that's not fantastic, because I think that adds so much depth to other stories and stuff like that. But again, my thing was kind of like, you're going to live forever. Things are not going to be quite as stressful for you as they are, because you live through it, right? Like I'm 46, and stuff that used to bother me when I was in my 30s and my 20s, I'm just kind of like, now if somebody like says something to me and they're trying to fight, I'm like, that's your stuff.
Yeah. That's such a great point. Yeah.
So that's kind of where that came from. And I really did want them to kind of play with humans a little bit, because they know, and I wanted to play on sort of the age gap thing that can be really gross if it's a specific kind of relationship, or it could be like, well, I know more than you and it's going to be fine, don't worry about it, type of thing. But no, I got compliments on Garrick and on Thalia and on Robin, because they are just so aloof about things.
Yeah. And that makes that's a great point, that adds their character, and having that age and that experience. They're and everyone else is like, what the heck? So craziness ensues. I mean, I know we've skipped over a whole bunch. We could talk all day about all the pieces and all the people and everything. What kind of, I guess, any thoughts that you have in terms of writing the ending, how that all went down? Like I said, as the pieces start to speed up, we have different people trying to get together that have been split up, and kind of all of those things. And especially just any thoughts you have in regards to the ending, where the pieces end up kind of setting the scene for the next book. Specifically meeting the My notes I have the ending question mark, brother question mark, Nate Kensington. That was my final thought of the book. Yeah, so any kind of towards the end thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, no, Nate was always going to be there. Like he was always going to be there. He showed up in a very different way. Again, in the process. So writers, if you are drafting, try not to focus too much on the first draft. Just get it out because it's going to be a million times different when you actually go back and edit and do all of those things. And that's something I always want to tell people because my first book, the first novel was the first and second one smashed together. So it was like 160,000 words. But I rewrote and rewrote and rewrote and rewrote. There's so many revisions. And then it only made sense for him to come in at the end because I was like, well, there's going to be, I got to lead it into the book 3 somehow. So I thought it was a good thing the way that I did it. And it wasn't necessarily like a huge dramatic cliffhanger, but it was still something. And because the number is 3 is so important, he was never not going to be there.
Yeah.
No, now they're 3. But the ending was really a last minute thing. And I love the way that it turned out. It was very, very different when I first started writing it. It was even very different when I started writing this last draft. And I couldn't necessarily figure out how to make it all work together. And I think I really liked the way it came out because Garrick is more involved. Marion is doing her thing. Lilith was always going to end up in a coma. Jacob was always going to be the one that did that. The library was going to catch on fire. But I think the action this way really threaded together like all of the crazy machinations that is the world. So I was really excited and proud of that.
Yeah. Awesome. What was your favorite scene to write versus a scene that was maybe a little bit more challenging or took some time?
Honestly, my favorite scene probably besides the one between Finn and Garrick is still Finn and Garrick.
Of course.
But when they first meet and Garrick's like, can anybody teach me how to drive? And like, because that really showcases Finn's and it's not insecurity. It really is just kind of part of his personality. Like he just wants to be involved in everything. Because I think that's kind of like a dog, right? Like my dog always needs to, if I'm hugging my husband, my dog needs to be there. So I tried to put that into his personality, but I think they play really well together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then with Aiden, I think I tried to give him the annoying brother situation in there too. So they were all having fun, but still annoyed with each other.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, so bring us into kind of what's on the horizon. What are you working on now, or what's the future look like?
So I won't be publishing anything again probably until 2026. I am expanding the 2 novellas I have out even after, and an accidental fairy tale a little bit more, kind of to make sort of a special edition trilogy, because Michael and Estella is his Trium Perfectum, Nate's mom, is the next one. And that will kind of not be a happy ending, but it'll show how Michael and Lilith got together and all of these things. So that'll be, I'm hoping, but I'm not tentative. It's very tentative. So if I can get all of the stuff in line, the Michael and Estella thing will be published September, October. It'll still be free because it'll be the freebie that I'll be pushing out. And then I'm hoping to do the 3 of them as a box set special edition in early 2026. And then book 3, I'm hoping to do spring 2026 also. So that's kind of the stuff on the horizon. Alternatively, I am starting, I have it like 4th of the way done, and I'm not writing all of these at the same time. So But I'm going to do a romantasy, small town romantasy in the same world, with characters who are 30 years and older. So Kent from Even After and his Trium Perfectum match will be the first one that I'm doing for that, and that will be full length. But that's coming 2026 sometime. Like, I don't want to. The last 6 months have been a lot.
Fair. Yeah. Oh, well, that's exciting, and I'm glad you are listening to yourself and pacing accordingly. And I look forward to just continuing to learn more about this world and seeing it all unfold. Basically, I think that's the exciting part as series continue on, and especially like expanding, like you said, with different novellas and seeing different characters within that. Story, basically. So, yeah, awesome. Is there, before we kind of close out, anything else that you want to make sure that you mention or we discuss or anything like that?
I don't know. I purposefully put sex in my novels because I don't want it to be considered a YA, and I guess I want people to sort of understand, like, when you have a traumatic brain, PTSD, any kind of trauma, it's really, really, really hard to connect to your body in that kind of way. And I purposefully gave it to Kaitlin because the rest of her life is so awful. So that's not really how people with trauma usually react in sexual situations. Any kind of intimacy, it usually is really hard for people to get into it. So I don't know if that's something, but that's something I'm going to start making more notes of in the backs of my books and stuff. Just because it's very difficult for people like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And good too. I think that's part of why I started podcasting in general. One is just reading books and wanting to talk about them with other people, but also a deeper thread that I've noticed is my own personal interest in intimacy and taboo topics and all those things. And it's kind of like a why are not a lot of people talking about them and wanting to explore them more. And also, I think when you have them in a book setting, it makes me want to talk about them even more because it kind of blurs the line, especially in romantasy or any sort of fantasy setting where it's not real. So then what is and isn't realistic, or kind of those themes. I think it makes it I've just always personally had an interest to kind of explore those topics, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I do too, which is why I'm, I used my very specific trauma and my therapy and all of those things to try to put real life stuff into, with magic, because I'm always drawn to magic, but it is such a close topic for me, because people, if they find the right person, they can get help and they can get unstuck from the places that the trauma and your brain gets you stuck in. So somebody once told me that my stories are a story of hope, and I was like, okay. I didn't think about it like that, but I really liked that they said that, because it's more like, okay, all of these things happen to Max and Kaitlin, but they're still trying to get their way out of it. So, like, and they do, but in a crazy magical way, but
Yeah. But it also, that again, why I consume romantasy is because it adds that fun element, but there's always so much that you can bridge over into real
yeah.
life, and having that hope and seeing, and like, again, in a industry that's dominated by, especially women, just even having access and reading about very strong female main characters and all those types of things. So yeah, I appreciate it as always, and
Thank you.
Really just sharing your work with the world to begin with can be such a vulnerable thing. So thank you for the work that you do, truly.
Thank you. Thank you for appreciating it too. And thank you for doing this and giving authors a platform to talk about their stuff. It's really good.
Yeah,
They need
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. It all works out.
It does.
um,
Yay.
yeah, perfect. Would you like to let everyone know where they can? I mean, ideally, if you're watching this episode, you should have already watched the first one. But can you remind everyone? There'll be links down below. But where can they find you if they'd love to reach out to you?
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to talk over you also, so I apologize. I pretty much live at Instagram. So it's at Kara M Zone _writes.
Mhm.
I have a PA now, and she said you have to have TikTok, and I was like, okay, TikTok hurts my brain. So she does that, but
Okay.
I also stop there once a day, and I'll always get my messages because she'll pass them on.
Mhm.
My website is karamzone.com. My books are kind of everywhere. Cinders is only in digital right now in Kindle Unlimited, but Ashes is available again everywhere. So yeah, and then the hardbacks are locally. They're online. They're wide. So anywhere you can find a paperback book, you should be able to purchase it.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for joining me again, and thank you for your flexibility. I don't know for those of you listening, I shared on my Instagram. Just life has been crazy, so I'm glad we were able to sit down and have this discussion and everything. So
Me too. Thank you for wanting to reschedule and having me on a second time too. It's really nice. I enjoyed talking to you.
yeah, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. It makes me feel good.
If you've made it to this point in the episode, thank you so much for watching. I'd be incredibly grateful if you showed some support either by following or subscribing, depending on what platform you're watching on, and leaving a comment. You can always follow me on Instagram at Busy Reading Romantasy or on TikTok at busy.reading.romantasy to see what I'm up to. You can also email me at busyreadingromantasy@gmail.com to tell me your thoughts, dreams, secrets, or if you just have any book and author suggestions you'd love me to cover. Grab yourself a good book, get cozy. I'll see you next Wednesday for a new episode.